Good afternoon, Abbotsford residents. I'm Mr. Pelican. I'm running for Mayor of Abbotsford to give you your city back, but the first number one goal is to get the RCMP in of what took place with Abbotsford's private police department, the threats on residents and blocking democracies and elections for greed. Today, ladies and gentlemen, I want to give you a story on this Abbotsford newspaper. When Darren Bruns showed me the ties to Rick Rates, Tyler Olson, and what Henry said, if you write one bad thing about me, I will put you on your belly. Meaning he brought them online, he kept them afloat, he put them to the city, and they were only supposed to do promotion videos and articles for Henry Braun. Today, I'm here about Mike DeYoung, and I'm here about the Conservatives. We're going into the last weeks of the voting for the Conservatives. This election is about Pierre Poilievre's agenda for Canada and for Abbotsford, and for every Canadian citizen to have now a real leader in government. This agenda ain't about Henry Braun. We saw Henry Braun go on the stage, tried to embarrass Justin Trudeau for the dike money and the flood money, and it showed you greed. What should have been taking place today is Vicky Hope should have been asking Mike DeYoung, why did you not stand up on the new Cacaro Ranch? Henry Brown's son was in front of his dad and lobbied all Ron Funk's jobs when Ron Funk is Henry's CEO, the CEO of Diverse, and he's Henry's partner. And they were fast-tracked, using the city to benefit. Why did you not stand up when Henry handcuffed the Augustine billionaire in order to control real estate corners of the market of Abbotsford so him and his partners benefit? But why didn't you stand up when Henry tried to kill somebody in broad daylight? Ed Fast, Henry Brown, and Mike DeYoung were always working together, like Darren Braun said it. They used their positions to clean for Henry, who was the leader and the head mob of Abbotsford, believing that I'm untouchable because he controlled the Abbotsford police and he controlled investigations, and we made that clear. Henry Brown believes if he can load Mike DeYoung to the MP position, he can get rid of this all. So let's talk about Mike DeYoung. Mike DeYoung, when he was a Liberal, for the Liberals, he still is a Liberal. You could see Marion Keys with him. You could see everybody with him. When he was a Liberal, he failed to get the highway put through Abbotsford to Mission to Langley and everywhere. That was his agenda. He failed to do that. These roundy rounds that he did in Abbotsford were complete garbage. He failed to build MSA Hospital bigger. He collapsed the old hospital down, which was a perfect facility for the homeless and that. He collapsed it for real estate deals. This was Mike DeYoung. Mike DeYoung screwed up the casinos through BC. Mike DeYoung screwed up and almost bankrupted ICBC. Mike DeYoung screwed up everything he touched, even the forestry. Mike DeYoung was a screw-up. This belly aching of Ed Fast, you could see nobody endorsing Mike DeYoung. Kevin Falcon, BC Conservatives, great leaders, are nobody endorsed. Not even the Abbotsford South Asian leaders. Nobody. It's just this guy, Henry Braun. Henry Braun, you know how many millions of dollars he stands to lose with his scams? How many investigations? Mike, I go down, you go down. Henry tried to end somebody's life in broad daylight, sending a massive spark through the political ring like no other, because it's your life. Then Henry used the Abbotsford police to threaten. Darren Brown showed that Henry controlled the majority of council to lift jobs, insider trading, racketeering, and that. This newspaper shielded from the whole of Abbotsford for Big Daddy. Big Daddy. When you're in this much trouble and people stand on the world stage and target you, the first one that should defend you is your wife, and she's not. She said to Henry, what the effing hell did you do now, Henry? What the bloody hell did you do? Henry used his money and his position to buy off the law. Then he used his money and his position to use the law to threaten to stop democracies and elections so he could load and win. That was clear. I wanted to stand before the stage and show that. You could see the way Ed Fast has been slammed out of the federal Conservatives. The Pierre Poilievre figured out that Ed Fast, his bet was with the Liberals and with the Henry Braun. And they weren't holding each other accountable. And Pierre Poilievre probably figured out how much did Ed scandal. Ed hasn't been given a proper goodbye. He wasn't given a handshake by Pierre Poilievre and a thanks. He'd been given a kick up his ass and sent out plaque. Now we'll get investigations what we need. For Mike DeYoung and Henry Braun and all Ed Fast to say we need a guy at experience. Mike's got experience with Donald Trump. Mike's got no experience. Mike's a scam, and he was a scam to allow this to happen to Abbotsford residents. So let's talk. Vicky Hopes is aware of the Chamber of Commerce of Alex Mitchell endorsing Mike DeYoung, which is the business community, what she did for Ross Siemens when the Royal Bank called me in, said, Mr. Pelican, with that endorsement from Greg Toast, you don't have a chance. I dropped my campaign, I returned all my money, and returned it back to everybody faithfully because the bank, the Royal Bank, made it clear what they were doing with the Chamber and the business community. Mike DeYoung went around and put his signs all in Mill Lake and on senior care homes, and they're all illegal now, hoping that he could win by getting the votes off these seniors that vote through Abbotsford. His signs are illegal. Henry used Gabriel when he targeted me. He's using Gabriel and bylaw to keep Mike's signs up. Mike DeYoung then used on his office the financial institution that's backing him, his partners, which are the CIBC and all the banks, which are the business community thing. Mike DeYoung's used this newspaper out, believable, Vicky's Hopes followers, and thinks that they can get Mike. So let me tell you how this is going to play out. Mike DeYoung figures, what the hell, I'm miles to go in, cheat all the way. When I'm elected, then it's hard to get me out. I don't want to see that happen ever again in a democracy in our elections. So I want to make sure that all candidates that are running can clearly see this and can clearly see what this newspaper's done. Mike DeYoung's full out load cheated, and Henry Brown and them were in it. We don't need Mike DeYoung. Nobody needs Mike DeYoung. Mike DeYoung's got no leadership. Even Bruce Bamman's endorsement behind Pierre Poilievre shows Bruce Bamman, who was led Abbotsford, who was a great mayor, led Abbotsford, endorsing the BC the federal Conservatives. And it shows all the Conservatives sticking together, endorsing this candidate. We saw the Riding Association of the federal Conservatives come out and endorse this candidate and Pierre Poilievre's plan for Canada. We saw all this. We see no leaders, even Mike's friends that were in the Liberals, coming out and say, oh, Mike will be a great guy to lead you. There's no experience you need over Donald Trump. You need the Conservatives to win, and you need Pierre Poilievre to deal with Donald Trump. Mike DeYoung ain't dealing with Donald Trump. That's a scare tactic to Abbotsford. It's reversing psychology, and Vicky Hopes knows it, as she knows as I know it, because her own people that work here told me. The scare tactic ain't even working. This ain't working. Mike DeYoung's signs are all out illegal over this long holiday weekend. And he's hoping with bylaw not pulling any of them down, because Henry was controlling the city through Ross Siemens, you can see that. The leverage of free advertising will get him elected. When I'm elected and I won the votes, nobody will kick me out, even though I cheated. I want to make it sure to every candidate that's working out there really hard, what Mike DeYoung allowed, what happened to Barty Sandu with Mark Warkenty and everything, was cheating. And they figure once we win and by cheating, it's impossible to remove you. We must make it clear right now to Elections Canada, to everywhere, this is what took place. When Henry Brown said, you go to Ed Fast, Mr. Pelican, it goes nowhere. When Mike DeYoung said, you cut a deal, Henry owns Abbotsford. Mike DeYoung was a former prosecutor and knew Henry should have never got in that car and ended my life. Mike DeYoung knew Henry's son wasn't supposed to be in front of him. Mike DeYoung knew Ron Funk of the Verse and Henry's partners stood to gain millions, and he was embezzling that through the city with decisions. Mike DeYoung knew Ross Siemens, Abbotsford First, and Dave Lowens and all them people were not allowed to be in Henry's house passing decisions on Abbotsford. This ain't about Canada. This ain't about a democracy. This is greedy, filthy, dirty old man. And you can clearly see why Pierre Poilievre hasn't said thanks to Ed Fast for many years of services and everything. Ed Fast is doing everything he can. And for a man of Ed Fast's stature, which was supposed to be called this great honorable Ed Fast, to lower himself, to tie himself with a liberal, everybody knows it was to cover up corruption and hold out investigations. This is clear what this election's about. This elections is about you, me, and Canada, and a voice. These four men ain't none of it. This is the leader of the mob of Abbotsford that ringleaded it and put it all together. And you could see no true leaders of Abbotsford like Bruce Bamman has stood up to say Mike de Jong would be good to be an MP. Not at all. Bruce led Abbotsford. Bruce led Abbotsford through major stuff, and Bruce was always there for Abbotsford, and he was a voice. Without Bruce Bamman and these people endorsing this shit box, you know what this was about. Henry Brown pulled all the stunts. From the Abbotsford Fraser Valley Indo Association, which Marcus Dalvis and Dave Sadu sit on, from Simon Gibson and but this is election fraud. Open federal election fraud. And this newspaper figured that she'd use her newspaper and her shield and she would control it from all the voters from seeing. And when poor Mikey wins, let's not get rid of Mikey. Win even if you cheat. Cheating and winning is cheating. Mike was better off to go lock all the candidates up, take them, get the Abbotsford police to arrest them, load them into Seacan and ship them out to Alberta and show that he can win. Mike de Jong broke the law. Mike de Jong went behind Henry to help Henry cover from the law. Mike de Jong knew Henry was wrong. Mike de Jong put his life and his career and everything he had in that basket to defend that Henry could pull it out with what Henry had ties to. And you could clearly see it. And you know, a good newspaper reporter would say Henry owned Into Diverse Construction, Ron Funk's his partners. Henry had counsel in his house. He lavidated them jobs. Even newspapers all across BC that I talked to and reporters going, how much money did Vicky Hopes get? How much money did Ken get to do this? And how much did the Abbotsford Police Chief Mike Sir get to clean it for Henry Brown, Mr. Millionaire and the mob leader? Henry just didn't block the election. Henry went about owning this effing town, and then he used these two men, Mike de Jong and Ed Fast. And that is why they stand today on the Capriccio newspaper trying to bellyate their bloody story that this man in the middle has got experience. He's got no experience. Nobody's saying it. Mark Straw ain't saying it. Brad Viss ain't saying it. Nobody's saying it. This was the ringleader of it all, Henry Brown. And that man deserves what every criminal deserves. Trial, and then charged and sentenced to jail. Mike de Jong's whole run is because Mike de Jong's whole run is because Henry Brown's pushing him, trying to get him in as MP to clean everything and get all this money. What happened to Cooper's Farm, Mike de Jong wasn't there. What happened to the Mackenzie Bog when people got deadly sick, Mike de Jong wasn't there. But they controlled this newspaper. And they controlled it from the law, and they controlled it from Abbotsford residents. And you could see Vicky Hopes, when you watch her, she just runs out. She took her picture out of the newspaper. She feels this big shield, the same as the Abbotsford police were doing under their shield when they came after me with the task force. It's on the world stage. Every politician knows this was about Henry Brown's greed and what Henry Brown stood to lose, and the whole setup wasn't about a democracy or an election or Canada. It's a scam. When I knew from Darren Braun to say forensic audits when I become mayor, Henry shit himself, and he's still shitting himself from one end of this Fraser Valley to the other end, and you can see it with this load. Ed Fast. The federal Conservatives found out, and you could see the dishonor that Ed has done to the Conservative Party. You could see Ed pouting. You could see Ed manipulating Brad Viss. But Ed Fast, his full job is to defend the Conservative logo and what's happening to it. And he's not. He brought a bloody liberal into the party. A liberal into the party that's done damage at the provincial level for many years, and then tried to blow this big story. The Mike de Jong is very well known. We need his leadership after all the screw-ups in the Liberal run he's done, the complete screw-ups that he banished, from the highway to the forestry to the casino to the alcohol, everything he's done. And Ed figures, well, you know, I'm a somebody. Everybody knows Ed undermined the federal